One of my favorite uses of Ikonart is turning your logo into a reusable stencil. Today I'm going to show you how I turned this logo into a stencil and printed it on 3 aprons. So the first thing I did is set up my artwork the way that I want and printed it off. Today I used a laser printer, but you can use a laser or inkjet. And I just separated into 2 stencils because I want to do a 2-color logo. And then I made my stencils. So I'm using our purple textile film today since I am going to be screen printing on fabric. And if you want to see exactly how to make Ikonart stencils, I'll have that linked below on the whole process, but it is really quick, really easy. And now I have 2 reusable stencils that I can make multiple items with. So let's get started. The first thing I do whenever I'm screen printing multiple items is get my items prepped first. So I put all 3 of my aprons on my tacky mats right away and then stacked them on top of each other so that they are just ready to go, so I can go from one right to the next. So then I just removed the backer from my stencil, placed it on my apron, and I am using Jacquard screen printing ink today. It is super thick, super opaque, super white, so I love using it on black fabric, and it looks really, really great with our stencils. So here you can see I'm just putting a little bit of ink on my stencil and then using my squeegee to scrape the ink across the stencil and making sure I get it in all the mesh openings, and then I just peel back and I move my first apron out of the way. I just hold my stencil in my left hand as I'm doing that. I don't set it down or anything. So I just set my first apron out of the way, and then I can move right on to my second apron without washing out the stencil or anything. So when I'm placing it on my second apron, I am a little more careful because there is ink on the stencil already. So I don't like to reposition it or anything like that. I like to just kind of hover it over the apron and get it where I want it and then gently set it down. And then I just use my pressure from applying the ink to kind of keep the stencil in place. So I'm just repeating the process, the same thing I did on the first one. Pull the ink across, and I just lift really slowly so that if there are any areas that I want to go over more, I can just put the stencil back down if I would want to, but these all turned out really good, so I didn't need to do that. And now I'll just do my third one. So like I said, I just kind of like hover the stencil over the apron and then place it down gently. I don't rub it down with my hands or anything, and then I just add the ink and pull it across with my squeegee. So eventually the ink will start building up on your stencil if you're screen printing multiple items, and then you can just wash out your stencil, dry it, and then keep going. So it's just up to you and your own personal preference and what type of ink you're using to decide on how many you want to screen print in a row without washing out your stencil in between. You can also mount our stencils onto a screen printing frame and do it that way if you'd like, and I'll link that video below as well. So now that I have my first color done, I'm going to let this color completely dry. I'm going to let these dry overnight. You could also use a heat gun to speed up the process, but I'm just going to let these dry overnight, and then I'll add my second color tomorrow. So I just washed out my stencil, and now I'm just going to add the backer back to my stencil, and once that's dry, I can use it again to make more aprons or put it on a shirt or do whatever. All right, so like I said, I let my aprons dry overnight, and now I'm ready to add the second color. So the second color in this logo is a blue. So I just mixed my own color using Jacquard white and Speedball blue until I got the color that I wanted. And now I'm ready to add that second color. So I added the H and D to this stencil so that I could use them for registration. In hindsight, I probably would have used a letter that was a little bit farther away than the water that I need to put on here, but that's okay. I'm just going to tape off my H and D so that I make sure I don't get any ink on those letters. And now I know that that little area of blue is in the exact spot that I want it to be in. So that's a really good tip when screen printing multiple colors, is to leave part of the artwork from your first color on your second color and then just use it for registration. So now I'll just remove the tape and remove the stencil And then I like to remove the tape from the stencil in between each one because I'm obviously using the H&D for registration each time. So I just retape the stencil each time. And again, I'm not washing out my stencil in between. I'm just being very careful when I place it down. And then I just repeat the taping process. So I'm taping off my D, tape off my H, and then I add my ink. Just being careful to really cover all the areas. It's always harder to tell the second and third, fourth passes when you're using a stencil that already has ink on it. It's a little harder to tell where you've already squeegeed the ink. So I'd like to just, work slowly, be really careful, and take my time, and then use the lift and look method. So I always lift slowly and look to make sure all the ink is in the places I want it to be. So that looks great. And again, I just move the apron out of the way and repeat the process. So I'm just putting my stencil down carefully, taping it up, adding my ink, and then revealing my design. It never gets old. Love it every single time.